Welcome to Health System CIO's interview with Darrell Keeling, SVP of IT and CISO with Parkview Health. I'm Anthony Guerra, founder and editor-in-chief. Darrell, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thank you, Anthony, for having me.
All right, very good. Darrell, you want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role?
Yes, Parkview Health is a 14 hospital health system in Northeast Indiana in Ohio, around 16,000 employees with several hundred physician offices and other locations and other joint ventures, as well as we offer what we call Epic Community Connect out to hospitals in which we don't own. So we extend our services out to rural healthcare to help them have an efficient medical record system for their patients. So, and I've been with Parkview 9 years, and in the SVP of IT CISO role, so primary the CISO of Parkview Health. However, I'm also responsible for interoperability, device integration, as well as email and cloud infrastructure and design and architecture, and other ancillary things. As we all know, as leaders, we tend to tend to inherit as time goes on.
All right, excellent, Darrell. That's great. Um, I know IT sort of modernization, infrastructure modernization, technical debt, these things have been on your mind. So we're going to explore that topic today. Um, I guess we could start out if you want to talk about, maybe give us a little bit of your definition of technical debt and sort of an overview of the issues that come up with having older infrastructure. I'm sure most people have this. What are the challenges that, for securing an organization in that kind of environment, which everyone has, right? Everyone's got that environment. So, but some are going to have it older than others. Some are going to have more antiquated stuff than others. And you're sitting there trying to secure a ship, that maybe is getting a little creaky. I don't know. We use certain analogies there, right, for old infrastructure.
Sure.
But wherever you want to jump in there.
Yeah, so the challenge is in every industry. We're always going to have some technology that's a bit dated. However, when you're in healthcare and you're running on very thin margins, it's sometimes very difficult to change out and replace hardware and infrastructure, especially when it's close to the patient care. And so with that, you end up kind of moving it on down the line. And so uh, there's a lot of hype in technology. So everyone likes the shiny object of something new and what have you. But one thing that we don't do well is really rationalize the systems that we have and making sure we're fully utilizing them for what we purchased them for. I would beg to say that a high percentage of technologies we have in place across the industry, we're probably using maybe, 50% of what they could actually do. Because by the time we got around to a feature set that we wanted to use, there was something else out there that could do it quicker, more efficient for your organization. And so that really leads to technology having niche purposes within an organization. So instead of you bring in a new technology, it doesn't replace the old one because someone has gotten into we don't want that to go, right. We use it for this niche purpose, and they have a position on it that makes sense, so you keep it. Then now you have two platforms that predominantly do the same thing. And so as you're looking at that and you're trying to rationalize, you really have to work with your leaders and things to uh, bring them forward to say, hey, this other platform can do this. Yes, it may be missing something here, but for the organization as a whole, it would make more sense to move forward and replace that technology. However, when you have an organization of 16,000 people in it and hundreds of leaders, everyone has an insight of why they want to keep something. So it takes time to influence leaders on using platforms and moving off platforms. When you look at your traditional network infrastructure, it's expensive to rip and replace that. And so a lot of times, you update and refresh as things fail, what have you. But we're in a situation in today's time that uh, it's become pertinent to replace a lot of network infrastructure for a couple reasons. One, the security platforms that are coming out today don't adopt well with some of the older infrastructure. And so that leaves you with a gap there. But also with the enhancements and with quantum coming forward and quantum resistant technology and encryption becoming a topic for us now, we're going to see a lot of infrastructure being reevaluated and being need to be replaced, which is a considerable cost to an organization. And
Mm-hmm.
so it sometimes seems with technology and technical debt, uh, it's situations like quantum, situations like organizations saying they're not going to support infrastructure on premise anymore. They want you to move to the cloud. Um, those are the things a lot of organizations seem to be waiting for to kind of get that push,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's another element of complexity, but at the same token, um, it's if it's working, leave it alone is kind of the thing. And with security and enhancements, it's very difficult not to have to replace some of that equipment and get it up to where the technical debt is beginning to be lower. And where we see it a lot in health systems is you're starting to see a lot of acquisitions and mergers in healthcare as we're acquiring or affiliating with other health systems. Um, they're not normally in the best shape as you're bringing them on because they have been trying to stay afloat and what have you for many years, and they've made a decision to affiliate or sell. So you're inheriting a lot of their technical debt as you're bringing them on as well. I think we saw that with Change Healthcare as well. Change Healthcare, they were acquired, and so they were trying to bring them into the fold. Unite and all of them were trying to bring them into the fold, weren't up to quite the standards. And so that's really where your cost comes in and consideration comes in, Anthony. Hopefully that's helpful for the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. So lots of areas we could go in there, but let's focus on the M&A for a second.
Yeah.
Um, the considerations that you're talking about, unless I'm incorrect, they're never really part of the decision to acquire or not to acquire, right? I mean, there are much bigger factors. You tell me if I'm wrong, but
Oh, absolutely.
there are business factors here,
They are.
and the sort of the perspective on this is, if this makes business sense, we're going to do it. And
Yes.
Darrell, you're going to come afterwards and do the best you can. It's never, hey Darrell, can you do some due diligence on this because we might not buy it if their IT infrastructure is antiquated. That's not how it works, correct?
That is correct. It's more, does it make business sense? And that's the right avenue to go.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think what we're seeing more today, that technology question is being asked a little more in the sense of cybersecurity and things of that nature, because there are really a lot of places wanting to do due diligence. I think we saw that in one of the big telco industries that did a merger and had a cyber event during that time, and it cost that acquisition some money, right? I think healthcare has looked at that as well. However, to your point, if it makes business sense, it happens. However, what leaders are starting to recognize that the cost to upscale an organization after you purchase it is costly. Technology can go into the millions based on what you bring on and how fast you need to, bring that technology in and get your organization stabilized. And the piece there is the expectation from the public and regulators and things in our industry that you're putting the funds toward that to become secure and you have a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're going to do everything at once, but that you do have a plan in place to get them where they need to be. Um, if you go back to some acquisitions in years past, um, a business would be brought on and may just survive on the technology in which they have, and would be no view to upgrade it.
Mm-hmm.
That's we're a little bit away from that now today. It has to be a point of conversation.
And that's because of the cyber risk,
That
right?
is correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
that is correct.
it sounds like what you're saying is that the numbers that can be involved here to get an acquisition up to speed if they've been extremely behind, which you would not know before the actual acquisition was finished. The numbers can be daunting, and perhaps at some point people should start taking this into account somehow because it can change. I wonder the value of the deal. Could it be that expensive that it could change the desirability of the deal?
Yeah, it could,
Mm.
and we have seen it in other industries. The other thing is organizations are more open to do pre-assessments before signing the deal. And what I mean by that, doing a pre-security assessment in the sense that, have they had an incident in the past, or are they currently having an incident right now? Uh,
Yeah.
and so, with that being said, there's due diligence around that that's very important because the last thing you want to do is uh, get caught up in that, and it hit your cyber insurance versus their cyber insurance and raise your deductibles for the future, right? But just inherently, the cost and the reputational cost around that, acquiring somebody that might already have an incident or had an incident
Hmm.
that needs to be discussed. Where are they at with that? Those type things. So those are new conversations. I guess they're not new. They've been in the last probably 10 years,
Hmm.
but those can play into the merger and acquisitions more than they did in the past.
And I'm sure you don't expect to see perfection, but you also don't want to see a horror show. And is there any way, without getting into too much specifics, of how you can describe a decent environment from a network and infrastructure perspective? Any high level attributes that you could say, when I go in and see this, I'm okay. If I go in and see this, on the other hand, that's really a big problem.
Yeah, I think it's more about when you're in the industry in any field, whether it be finance or security, there's certain things you like to hear, right? And in this space, it's they understand what endpoint protection is. It's not a new buzzword. It's been around for probably 8 to 10 years, and if they're still talking antivirus, and that's truly what they have, that could be a red flag if they don't have some level of understanding of risk in a sense of patching and when you're talking to them their technology is antiquated and they can't patch
Oh boy, yeah.
uh, those type things like they give you a model of piece of equipment or they say they're on Windows 7 or something of that nature and when I say that not in small quantities maybe it's a third of their platforms or their OS is Windows Server 16, 18, or something. When you hear those type things, you start to get a good read on what you're probably going to walk into around that, and start and think how do you mitigate that risk from the rest of the organization that you want to tie it to, and you have to make it's tough business decisions whether or not you connect an organization to you anymore, or you wait till some things are put in place before you do that. What is the defining line for risk level of connecting your organization that you have reasonable shape and then putting another one, right? It's a risk decision for the business, and so conversations need to be had around that. It's not the CISO's full decision. It's hey, here's our recommendations, here's the conversation, here's the level of risk we'd like to get it to before we connect, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I mean, and I'm thinking about sort of how this could play out. Um, when the business makes an acquisition in healthcare, part of the selling point, part of the goal is data flowing back and forth, right?
That's correct.
So we make the acquisition. Darrell looks at it and says, "I don't like this at all. This is a huge, the security over here is a problem. I don't want to integrate right now. I'm not comfortable. There's things I need to do." And they're going, "But Darrell, when we bought this thing, we told everybody and we told the patients and we told the physicians that we're gonna have bidirectional flow of information. So you're saying we can't do that right now." But what you said is, I think, the overall dynamic for security professionals in healthcare, which is we do not ultimately make decisions. We communicate risk, and the business decides what level it wants to take. So you may say, hey, this is a red, so to speak, and you guys want to do it, you can do it. But I'm telling you, it's a red, and here's what it's going to take to get to a yellow or a green in terms of time and money. Am I right in terms of how
No,
those? Go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. It's a risk-based decision, and you look at all businesses were built on risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so what risk tolerance do you have? The first one is there anything that's going to directly impact patient care? Well, that's, if there's something that's just as red as that, then, hey, we're going to, we're going to pause, right? It's something that we can mitigate in, 6, 12, 18 months. Um, well, then maybe it makes sense to move forward. Is there other ways to approach it? Is really the thing. And we, if you think about it from a health system perspective and a complexity, that's done in every business area. It isn't just done in security. It's done in every business area as you're bringing on an acquisition. Do they have enough beds? Well, yeah, they're different beds than what we have in another location. Do they have the infusion pumps? Oh, they're a different model. You have to do it differently, right? But is there a risk of a learning curve? Yes, but is it so big that you can't go ahead and move forward?
Mm-hmm.
What are those type things that need to come to the top? And security is really uh, brought out in the beginning, and there are certain situations you wouldn't connect, but I think many of them can be overcome in a short period of time with the new technology and mitigated as you bring stuff forward. But yeah, it has to be a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be just a silo. Hey, the guy over here is saying no, you can't do it. No, we need to talk through it, right?
Yeah, because that wouldn't make you very popular with a lot of people, I
No,
believe.
no,
Yeah, they'd
no,
say
not at all.
not good. So this is a good time to talk about this idea of communicating risk, um, right? Because you're communicating cyber risk to folks who may not be IT people or cyber people, and you don't want to be talking technical details of. You want to somehow put it in business speak. Is that an art that you've
Yeah,
developed over the years?
it is an art, and it's based on industry. Healthcare, I feel, is probably one of the easier ones to frame it up for business speak, in the sense that healthcare has been doing a lot of these things that we do in cyber for years. And what I mean by that, they understand what quarantine means by quarantining something, right? They understand what it means. They understand what a virus is or what those things are, right? They understand different elements that are easier to share with them, that they can understand. Hey, if we have a cyber attack, we're going to quarantine it away from the rest of the business. We're going to focus on that. We're going to isolate this component from that. We isolate during COVID, right? There's a lot of these things that really resonate with
Yeah.
those leaders that you don't have to go and drill into. And you can use those things to your advantage. Now, it does get old and redundant if you use it a lot, but I think one of the things, in my opinion, as a CISO doing it for a long time, you're really the educator, because cybersecurity and the CISO role hasn't been around as long as the CIO role. It has been around as long as a CFO or CEO or COO. And so we're still educating groups. If you go back to when CIOs came in, when they were just VP of IT, and now they came CIOs, they too were educating what that role really meant and trying to
Hmm.
groom it to where it's going to be. And you look at the CISO role, it has matured. It's a role that's extended beyond IT now, based on risk decisions that you're making, contractual uh, items that you're looking at, making sure you're reducing risks in contracts. You're really looking at business risks and not just speaking just to IT. And so you're speaking to different leaders. And so I think that's the big thing. The view on that is that we're still in that education type row with our boards and others. Um, we walk in a room in the CFO talks. Um, they don't have to put it in analogies. Uh, everybody in there is astute to
Yeah.
capital and expense, and you're in that room, and by the time you're in that room, you've got a grasp on that. When you're talking about areas of the business, the doctor doesn't come in and change out acronyms when they're speaking in that room, because that is the business. So you elevate up to it as you're learning. So that's kind of how I view it, Anthony.
Excellent. Very good. You mentioned contractual items and the involvement of security professionals like yourself in contracts, right? Vendor contracts and things like that. So one of the dynamics I find fascinating is that, as in all areas of life, uh, sometimes the customer has more power than other times, depending on the vendor in question. Now, for example, from what I hear, there's almost non-existent leverage on the customer side when you're dealing with these global medical device companies, because there's maybe one or two companies in the whole world that make this device that your clinicians need, and they're not going to listen to Darrell say, "Hey, you crossed this out on page 4," right? It's just not going to happen. Whereas on the middle and mid-tier and smaller vendors, you may have you could be the dream customer. They'll do anything you want. So it's just interesting how your power varies depending on the vendor. And I'd just like your thoughts on, in general, as a security professional, how you deal with these contracts. What are you trying to get in there? Red flags for you, things like that. Then you have to deal with your internal customer who wants this thing, and you're sitting there with the contract on your desk, and they're going, "What's going on with that? Why do you still have it?" Or, all different ways those conversations can go. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so in healthcare, we have several different challenges that. So if you look at healthcare today, there's a lot of startups in the space. And so you have that level of risk and maturity of contract that comes in front of you. They're a startup. Yeah, they may have put their technology in Amazon, Azure, Google as a platform. So there's different levels of risk. You look at that. And remember, they're still, in many cases, dealing with medical information, no different than any other organization. And so you're really trying to align that contract to protect your health system and make sure it's got the right provisions in there. Uh,
Hmm.
there's going to be things in your normal third party risk assessment for security that they probably aren't going to be able to adhere to as a startup. And so you've got to look at it. How do you enable this life saving piece of equipment to come into your environment and accept some of this risk, right? And so you have that. Then you have the mid tier ones that are similar to that can scale. They're more flexible in some of their contract language and what they'll do to maintain your business and things of that nature, and making sure you have the right provisions. The big ones that you can put the big names on, yes, they are very difficult to work with from a contractual perspective. You can work with your legal departments and red line. As soon as you do it, you went through the due diligence and you know it's coming back. And you try, and you try your best to get the right provision and protect your health system, your patients, and realizing that they, on the flip side, are doing the same thing. And so where do you meet in the middle? Fortunately, with cyber and some of the regulatory things, it's becoming standard template for a lot of those things, for some of those in there now, that you would have to push or kind of nudge to get in there in the past. So
Hmm.
there is some of those pieces in there that's a little easier than in the past. But the bigger the organization, yes, the less leverage you have. The other part about it is they know where you're going to go get that tool, or where you can get that item at. Uh, but they also sometimes are challenging, even to align them to your platforms. Let me give you, Anthony, give you an example. Uh, Maybe in your organization, you have what they call a privileged access management system that all your vendors come through, and you monitor and you log and you do all those things. Well, the bigger ones, if when you're they're big, they don't want to necessarily come through that. They
Mm.
want to manage their own, right?
Hmm.
They want to manage their own. So now you have two standards. You're paying for the cost of investment around your privileged access, then they want one. Well, when they put theirs in, a lot of times you lose visibility. So maybe
Mm.
they won't send you the logs from there because it's proprietary to them. They don't want you to see what they're doing. But at the end of the day, as a CISO, you own that risk of whatever they're
Mm.
touching in that environment. So we still have those challenges with large organizations. And I've talked to peer CISOs to ensure I wasn't the only one, and maybe I was
Right,
missing an opportunity, right? But
right,
they too are having those challenges. So when you look at that, and as an organization, any organization, whether it be healthcare, whatever, more they source and do with those bigger, they start gradually losing visibility of their own systems.
right,
They don't have the leverage to say, hey, Mr. Big organization, I have to have that data to align with regulatory expectations just by doing right by my patients. So, if I don't have that, you have to alert me something's wrong. Well, then it would go from their way in to their security operations and then back to me. And so I lose time when there might be a situation in my environment. Now, some of them are more flexible, but there's some bigger ones out there that really follow that guideline I'm talking about, which makes it challenging for us a lot of times. And making sure we have what we need to protect the systems they have in place that they're responsible for, but they're in our environment.
yeah. And you're talking about losing time. That's if they saw it and if they alerted you, and if that didn't get caught in some black hole of
Correct.
information, right? And that the ball got dropped on their end, so to speak, and you never know now. It's not just a delay. You're never gonna know. So, and if you have multiple vendors each coming in their own way with no visibility, right?
Mhm.
Now it goes
Yeah.
up and up. But again, as we said, you have the users saying, Darrell, why isn't this on? Why isn't this contract done? Right? And you just like, well,
Yeah, and so another one to add to that, and I think all CISOs are dealing with this, is that um, I mentioned table stakes of endpoint agents being on devices in acquisitions and things. Well, there's situations with these medical devices and vendors that don't want the organization to put their endpoint agents on there.
hmm
So they want to put their own. Well, if they put their own, they're the ones getting the information, the
right,
alerts. You aren't. And
right,
so it puts us in a very unique position that the industry says, we want you to do this, but other industries, the bigger industries that are your source industry, is not allowing you to do that.
hmm
And there's no trade-offs in contracts either. I've seen contracts before that says we'll put our own endpoint agents on, we'll update our own machines, we'll do all this, right? Um, but at the same time, there's no accountability to say, hey, why are you still on this version?
right, right,
you know uh
yeah.
so anyway, so there's some unique challenges. I think all industries have that. I know the industries I've been in the past, manufacturing and finance, had systems similar to that. But when you get into healthcare around medical devices, it does make you want to scratch your head of, all right, are we moving the right direction in this these big organizations around allowing health systems to protect their devices today? And there's been a lot of work about trying to get medical device companies to patch and this and that and other. But at the same token, I'm not sure that momentum is where it needs to be today.
I mean, ultimately, it's probably a lack of competition in that space, right? There's too few vendors to create any urgent need for them to differentiate in this area to gain business. If there were more vendors, but these devices, I guess, are so unique and so complicated that, you know, you don't get startups jumping in and making medical devices usually.
No, you don't. Maybe some consumer type items, yes.
Right.
I think the other part is that there's a still, even with all the great work that's been done in the industry, there's still this tendency for them to kind of sit behind the FDA and say, well, we can't do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Well, you know, the FDA's put out statements, you can do that.
Mm,
You need to keep your equipment updated, right? You, you, you can't be updating the computer on the outside, connecting to a device that can never be updated, right?
right.
And
Right.
these things have to live an extended life period, right?
hmm
The other downside of this is if the life cycle of these medical devices becomes shorter because we need to keep them updated more. That
Oh,
can be very costly to the
uh,
industry.
yeah.
Where you might have an infusion pump for 6, 7 years or whatever it might be, right? Whatever your life cycle is, and you go, oh, well, that operating system can't handle that, and you're not. We need to take it every 3 years. There's a cost trade off with some of this too, and so we spend a lot of money in healthcare to segment a lot of that technology to allow it to be safe.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, that fence, if you will, is
Yeah.
only as good as the threat actor stays on
Yeah.
the far side of it.
Right.
If they cross the fence, then there's a situation that could transpire there.
Right. Um, okay. Let's talk. We're talking about infrastructure modernization, technical debt. Let's focus, I guess, on the infrastructure side, right? You could say there's two sides. There's the application side, there's the infrastructure side. We talked about application rationalization, how extremely challenging that can be, right? To get users to give up certain applications. But I guess you have more control over the infrastructure side because theoretically maybe anything you did over there would be invisible to the users, although expensive, like upgrading on that side. But I want to ask you about getting buy-in for those investments. So on that infrastructure network security side, when you see a need to make investments and upgrade and modernize, those I would imagine can be challenging things to get investment in, because people want to go to the AI and the stuff that more directly makes the docs happy and the nurses and burnout and all these things. And you're here maybe asking for a lot of money for stuff that theoretically no one will notice even happened, but is super important. So what are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's two camps in it. So when you look at the traditional infrastructure, on-premise infrastructure, if you will, and you're running your medical record system in it, and you're providing all these new tools to the doctors to help them with burnout, whether it's voice or what have you. All that infrastructure has to rely on a lot of network connectivity and a lot of different things. And so that's been kind of the push to remove some of that technical debt just by inherently for it to be efficient.
Yeah.
But that's like taking the path from that voice system through your infrastructure. It still leaves a lot of technical debt to the left and the right of in other areas that may not be enhancing that way. So you have that piece of it as well. Applicate and to your point, you can do a lot of the underlying technology, but in healthcare, you have a lot of applications still that are kind of proprietary, that are aged, that are niche, that won't run on certain platforms. And we see this challenge more and more as Microsoft and other platforms start putting more aggressive end of life dates on their operating systems. And so we're challenged by having the foresight, looking at it a couple years out to say, yes, we need to come off this operating system, but it's probably going to take 2 years to come off that application to a newer application of the same vendor, or a new different application altogether. And so that has to be done. So there is some disruption there around the OS as well in
Hmm.
that space. But when there's pure trade-offs, when it's just OS and the applications support it, a lot of that's done virtually, can be done seamlessly, and things of that nature. So we're very good in the virtual space of that. It's the traditional bare bones technology, the bare bones metal that runs that. So your VMware and your VS, all that stuff that may have to scale as well because it ages out also. So you have that. Then you have the piece of it is many organizations are coming forward and saying, hey, on premise is at the end of its roadmap. You need to start looking at moving to the cloud. And then that enables you to move off some of that technical debt. However, we can't lose sight that even the cloud has technical debt. It's just a new way of looking at it. It's still going to have aging operating systems potentially. It's still going to have other things that you could do better within there. It's a lot more simplistic and seamless to upgrade and do. but you still have to pay attention to it. And there's becoming more and more cost around that as well. It's not just your power consumption and things as well. You might have a firewall in there that's not part of Microsoft Suite. Maybe it's one of the big vendors, and you pay for subscription for their firewall or for their technology in the cloud, which there's cost around it and changing it out. And it's always adding new features as well. So a couple of different buckets, couple of different trains of
Hmm.
thought on that. I think the biggest thing right now is industry is driving um, organizations off on premise to the cloud. We're seeing that more and more. We're seeing it with us at the health system. We're moving to Oracle Fusion in the cloud with our ERP, and so we're moving that way. Uh, Retraining a lot of our people, going through different things with Oracle, and talking to them about what that looks like, and upskilling our staff and learning what that's going to look like, what the transition is going to be, your normal ERP conversion or change out, but recognizing organizations stayed on their ERPs for quite some time. It's night and day different as you go over into an Oracle Fusion or a Workday. It's almost sometimes learning a new platform. You know the
Hmm.
name of the platform, but where the widgets at and what I do here and the capabilities are different as you would suspect. So
Hmm.
it's really bringing everybody together to really have a consensus on what you're bringing in, when you're going to bring it in, around that as well. Whether it's what component of the ERP system you're going to do first. Is it going to be HR? Is it going to be financials? What's that going to look like? And so I think there's different facets there, Anthony, of how technical debt's gradually moving away. But at the same token, it's going to be interesting how many health systems can get to what level percentage of in cloud versus on premise, because health systems are always going to have an on premise
Hmm.
to some level of a hybrid for many different reasons. I think you could look at a manufacturing facility the same way. You don't necessarily want all your controllers running your manufacturing lines. You don't want them sitting in virtual cloud when they're running in a facility somewhere, and that disconnect shut down your facility, right? The
Hmm.
internet go and
Hmm.
shut down your facility.
Hmm.
Healthcare is that same way. So there's got to be a lot of thought around hybrids and what that looks like. And there's a lot more Epic medical record systems going in the cloud. You hear a lot about Cerner and Oracle for that going in
Hmm.
the cloud. So we're starting to see a lot of that, and we're starting to learn about what does that mean to a health system. Uh, where's the redundancy at? Where's the resilience? What are the things that you need to be looking at to make sure that you still provide care for your patients if the internet's down, or any other thing that may come about, um, natural disaster, so on and so forth. So different purviews, but that also goes in why other people are looking at for the technical debt perspective. Is that a trade off? And the last one I'll leave, Anthony, is during COVID and during a lot of this thing with the government and cutting costs and things with healthcare and challenges. Um, Technical debt will also be more difficult because I think we'll see a lot of places determine if they want to depreciate equipment longer and extend the depreciation out, where you might have been 4 years on a server or five. Now
Hmm.
maybe they're going to go 7 or 8, or
Hmm.
you see what I'm saying. And so that sounds good in the financial world, but in the cyber and the tech world, that's a very challenging balance. And I think we'll see some of that as budgets get thinner and tighter in healthcare.
Do you need to wrap, Daryl?
No,
Or
I'm
do
good.
you? All right, I just wanna ask you like one or two more questions. Um, we're talking about cloud. You're describing, I think some vendors are maybe they want everyone in the cloud, right? They want you in their cloud. So maybe there's no choice there at some point, and it's sort of here's our date for when you'll be moving to the cloud. And then sometimes you have choice because you said there's instances in healthcare where you want things on-prem. So
Mhm.
do you sometimes you feel like the vendors forcing or requiring you into their cloud when that's not where you want to go? Does that ever happen?
I think that is in some cases. I think that from using the big vendor, saying one of the bigger vendors, for them to reduce their costs, it makes sense for them to have a platform in the cloud that's multi-tenant platform. They can separate all their customers. They can develop features and functions for the masses, and really control the product and the performance and all those things, and provide a great quality platform, and listen to the customers, the features they want, and then give them to the customers. So Workday
Mhm.
is a prime example. Workday, if you're familiar with Workday HR, their platform, purely multi-tenant platform. You have X amount of time to review what they've changed in the system, and then it goes out to the rest of the organization to use, or rest of the organizations they support, right? Being
Mhm.
multi-tenant, and that's a win for Workday. They can cut their cost, they cut their time to market and features down, and then you have platforms that you have platforms like Epic right now. Epic medical record systems. They have their own hosted environments now. They have organizations moving their platform into Azure, Azure, Amazon, and Google. So you actually put your system in there and you manage it and run it
Mhm.
in that space. But they still support an on-premise solution as well. The challenge for that is that organizations continually have to scale based on Epic's needs and performance. So you've got
Mhm.
that capital cost every year of scaling, right?
Mhm.
And so that's very tough. And we're talking about the dictation software to make it easier on the doctors and things. Well, that takes performance, it takes memory, it takes storage, it takes all that, right? So scaling's tough. Well, it's also tough for Epic to have those platforms like that, because it's hard for them to sustain the market as well. Because if you have a Cerner building stuff in the cloud, and that market goes well, they can really adopt features faster, promote
Mhm.
it in the same way Workday is my example, right?
Mhm.
uh, and right now Epic, which is doing a good job, they don't have that multi-tenant platform, right? So one would think that's where they would want to lean going forward. With that being said, they have a lot of health systems that would have to come off on premise at some point
Mhm.
to create that model.
Mhm.
And so, it comes down to scale and cost. I think where that comes into play. So, an Oracle or one of them can offer their platform a little less expensive,
Mm.
um, providing it fully in the cloud, then maybe an Epic may be able to in the future. That's just a perception. I think it's just looking at the big lens of things and saying, uh, I think most want to be in the cloud for that reason. I think for healthcare, the tie and the tug of war is you have to serve your patients, and so is a hybrid model going to be available for a medical record system in the future? If you have two data centers with Epic or a medical record system in it, and you lose internet,
Mm.
uh, then what do you do there at the local level? So you're going to need something there.
Mhm.
You're still going to need to store all that data from your medical devices and all that information. So interoperability systems, medical device systems, storage. There's a lot of your traditional infrastructure will need to still be close,
Mhm.
somewhere within region of something.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It all ties to disaster recovery and business continuity, right? So
That is correct.
all this stuff weaves and dovetails together,
Hmm.
right? Because you're
Oh,
talking about
absolutely.
cloud thing, it's just it's all woven.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It works. It's very complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity. I think there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained, um, by looking at cloud and looking at your infrastructures, and re-architecting and designing that will help organizations cut costs. The challenges are, in healthcare specifically, is all the new things coming in. The buzzword AI is out there. We might as well put
Mhm.
that out there today, Anthony. That way
Mhm.
you don't have one video that doesn't have it. Uh, and so you got agents, agentic agents. You got all these things we're talking about running processes and what have you for organizations. You know, they can they reside in the cloud predominantly.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, and that's something to really think about. Um, what does that look like if you've got thousands of agents running administrative tasks and doing all this work, front end work, and then you're dependent on the internet. Maybe you're in a region that can't get good quality internet. So those things to take in consideration. What does on premise look like for that? I don't know. I know there's some you can load down and you can use it, but is that scalable as well? So a lot of questions coming for.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think we're gonna wrap it here, but um, the business continuity implications of everything in the cloud are scary, right? I mean, we know that the ransomware cyber incident, they shut you down. There's huge business continuity problems there. But also with a 90% in the cloud environment where everything's driving to, there's huge business continuity implications there. And as you alluded to, we're going to get to the point where now uh, the AI we're leveraging daily is something that we find it very jarring or impossible in some instances to function without. So you lose this stuff and you're standing there with a stethoscope, and it's scary, right? How dependent we are becoming on technology.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that I've kind of tossed out there, and you can cut this to the end if you don't like it, but is if we were in a perfect world and all these agents are in place and we've
Yeah,
cut all the headcount and re-skilled as many people as we can,
yeah.
and an organization is having financial trouble,
Hmm.
you can't turn off those agents. That's what's making your money. So what's your levers, right? Our normal
Yeah.
lever has been reduce headcount. That's always been
Mm-hmm.
the go-to.
Mm-hmm.
That those levers won't be there. So what will the levers be in the future that enables an organization? Or if you get to that point, there's really not a big enough bucket to bail you out. Uh,
There's two sides of it. You either save money, which, as you said, you may be lean, there's no more places to cut, or you got to increase your revenue. That's it. You can't do either of those, you're finished, right? You're done.
yeah, but before, there was assets to, there's human capital you can move,
Yeah,
there's other
yeah,
assets you can move off.
right.
These things not necessarily existing in what you perceive, 10 years from now.
Hmm.
Will it get that far? There'll be some organizations get that lean and that good, but at the same token, um, we know that human capital is going to be challenged to reskill and retrain for this, which is great. We've been doing that for years. But I'm just thinking, what levers can we pull then?
Listen, we're at a crazy time, Daryl. I was reading some stuff this morning that the heads of the well-known generative AI companies are quoted as saying they don't know where things are going. They don't know. It's too fast. It's too murky. It's going real fast, but nobody knows where it's going. So it's gonna be a wild ride, Daryl.
It is going to be, and it's I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I've got plenty of career left that I'll get to enjoy a lot of it. Uh,
yeah.
you know,
And
so
and
it,
then we'll let the kids take over.
yeah,
Yeah.
and interesting enough, they will be more prepared and understanding of it because they've lived with it.
And it's always been that way and it always will be.
Yeah,
Right? It's just that's been just the cycle. There's nothing new under the sun. And sort of technology and the pace of change kind of not that it's passing you by, but you certainly get that feeling that the kids know it better. I think that's been the case forever,
I
right?
can't. Yeah, I agree with that. I tend to
Yeah,
agree with that. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm just hopeful that the aptitude needed to learn some of these things that we have the people step up into these
yeah,
positions because as you get more into the AI component, machine learning, and these programming agent, it's a different way of different way of learning. It's a different mindset and things, and you know
yeah.
I think there's some pieces there to be thought about.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Sure.
I hear you. Darrell, this has been an amazing
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and look forward to catching up with you down the road again. So I appreciate this, Darrell.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. You have a great
Have a
day.
great day. Thank you. Bye.